Hello everyone and welcome to Tosu Show, and today we are going to play Higurashi When They Cry Keiichi, the last episode, the episode 8, at last. I just finished the previous Tsumi I forgot the name. Tsumi Oroboshi is episode 6, the episode 7 is Matsuribayashi, I think. Anyway, I finished episode 7, and now I'm ready to actually do the episode 8, which is the last episode from the Higurashi When They Cry franchise, assuming that you don't count all the spin-off and all the remakes that were done of Higurashi. So as you can see, we start the game into that moon. We see the moon and then the tree on top of it, and in this case it's very important because it does represent whatever happened at the end of episode 7. So let's see how we're gonna get started that episode. I don't remember the name of this one, so let's get started. Matsuribayashi, so that's the one that is named Matsuribayashi. At least let it end with a blissful dream. Festival accompanying chapter. The riddle you have been entrusted with solving now finally becomes unraveled. What must be done to stop the chain? And what will happen in the ultimate end? It's a showdown between the conclusion you reached and the one I reached. There is no difficulty. You should understand that now. So yes, why there's no difficulty is because we know actually nearly everything from whatever happened in the whole franchise. I'm not gonna spoil unless the game itself is spoiling what happened in episode 7, but the end of episode 7 has a lot of things going on and it does explain quite a lot of things. Now this episode is supposed to be about how to solve all that situation, so you don't have to have a chain that is being repeated forever and ever. So let's get started with Matsuribayashi. Everyone is entitled to happiness. The difficult part is accepting that. Everyone is entitled to happiness. The difficult part is fulfilling that. I too am entitled to happiness. The difficult part is working out a compromise. Federica Berncanster. Of course, this is a work of fiction, so whatever you read is just fiction. Oh, I like that piano. So there's a theme that is named Soranomuko, which is actually that theme that you hear here, which is one of the themes that I think Die, which is one of the main composer did. He also did You, which is the other very famous na 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 na, which is named You. And we just have to go ahead and actually read now. So I'm gonna use the classic mode of the design, so meaning that the sprite will be the sprite from Ryukishi 07, who is the main writer but also the main designer of this game. So let's get started. Let's start to read. The study was filled with piles of books and papers. In that study, there was a full-figured old man writing something at his desk in utmost concentration. There was also a little girl sorting out papers on the carpet. She almost looked as though she was playing with them. But the serious expression she was wearing made it clear that she wasn't. Grandpa, I'm done sorting them out. Thank you. Let's see what happened. Look, there are a lot of people with the same symptoms. It's way higher than the national average. That's exactly what I expected. There's an intriguing treatise over here too. It discusses psychosurgery and civilization. It also predicts the existence of parasites that inhabit the frontal lobe. So just to take a break, a little bit of reading here, it seems that we're in the past and we have with a little girl that talked to her grandpa. Now I kind of already know, I think, who that could be, but I will not say anything about that because that will be a spoil. But it's interesting that it starts this way, so let's continue. The frontal lobe is what causes emotions. That's right. Emotions aren't created by the art. They're just side effects of the chemicals secreted by the organ known as the brain. If parasites capable of acting on that organ did exist and spread to create a colony, then that colony's thoughts would be unified. So are parasites the cause of the spread of ideology? When ideologies clash, is that because different parasites are competing to expand their habitat? That's actually a pretty good question. So whatever you as a person is, it does depend about your brain, right? Like everything is done through anything that is secreted through your brain, and the reality is that that's what we are. We're a bunch of science in ourselves, and that's what made us be what we are. So what they're saying about parasites and all those kind of things could potentially be the answer. Everything that's happening within your body is something that is chemical, in a sense. Okay, let's continue. That, or to expand religion, to expand national borders, or to expand a race. It's hypothesized that our differing cultural communities and their conflict are the result of parasites influencing human thoughts. A little bit of context here. For obviously, it's not necessarily parasites in this case, right? But that goes very well with the story of Higurashi. If you understand the story, you will see that it's related to some kind of very specific syndrome. But that being said, in real life, everything that we do depends on our brain, and our brain acts in mysterious ways. So there you have it. Anyway, let's go back to reading. There are people in other countries who think the same thing as you, Grandpa. Of course there are. There are countless parasites on this earth, and it's well known that some coexist with their host and some control their host. We've also discovered plenty of parasites that infect humans. Yet, despite that, we adamantly deny the possibility that parasites could infect humans and control their host. Even the hypothesis of such a thing. Why do you think that is? Humans aren't special in any way. Because that hypothesis would also mean changing our view to see the spread of ideologies from the perspective of epidemiology. If conflicts in ideology can be resolved through debate, then they're peaceful. But if those conflicts occur epidemically, they become frightening. And if one were to treat bad thoughts or the spread of culture as an epidemic? Think about the Black Plague in Europe during the Middle Ages, a vile infectious disease spread. They first infected people into hospitals and didn't release them until they completely recovered. Some even died in those hospitals. They burned their corpses. They confiscated and burned everything those patients touched for fear the plague infected it. They even suspected families of infection and forced them into hospitals. So they would hospitalize healthy people over individual ideas? Replace an idea with a disease. The rest is the same. Patients won't be released until they completely recover. People burn everything that may have been touched by the patient. They force the patient's family to go to the hospital. People are free to think what they will, right? Thoughts aren't pests. If an idea was created by parasites, it would be exactly the same as the plague. In other words, an idea is like an incurable disease. An incurable epidemic. I don't know why I said that. So, you mean anyone with a different idea is treated like they have a disease? That's right. If we bring this to its logical conclusion, parasites could be responsible for mass murders of people belonging to different races or religions. But this can be seen as justifying genocide. Therefore, talking about parasites in brains has been taboo since the war. What does taboo mean? It means something people shouldn't get involved with. That's why nobody researches these things. Nobody even remembers anything about parasites that live in the brain. They assume that parasites which control humans simply don't exist. Haha, that's almost funny. How can we prove something doesn't exist? That's just impossible. Exactly. Proving that the devil exists is easy. You just have to show him to someone. But you can't prove it doesn't exist. You can show somebody something that doesn't exist. It's almost as if the parasites in the brain are controlling people so that they can keep their own existence a secret. Me and my grandpa shared a happy laugh together. Humans are simply another animal in this natural world. We might be at the top of the food chain, but it's foolish to think that we are superior to others. Humans can be controlled by parasites. Just because the existence of such parasites hasn't been proven doesn't mean they don't exist. They exist. I know they do. That's happened before in the scientific world, right? That's right. Not all scientists are recognized for their work while they're alive. There were many who were ridiculed and couldn't prove their theories to be true. But, Grandpa, I hope your theory will be recognized before you die. Otherwise, it would be so sad. Don't worry. God doesn't ignore people who work hard. Hard work always pays off in the end. But when will that happen? Nobody knows when God is going to descend from heaven, just like you never know when you'll be robbed. So we always have to be alert and ready, so that we don't miss our chance. That was something that my grandfather said all the time. Nobody knows when efforts will bear fruit, but it will happen one day. That's why you must always work hard so you have no regret when the time comes. Your efforts will bear fruit someday. That's what he meant. But is it going to happen before you die? Even though there were so many scientists whose work weren't recognized when they were alive? That was such a cruel thing to say. But I didn't mean to be cruel. I had seen how hard my father had been working, and I also knew he wouldn't live forever. I just wanted his work to gain recognition before he died. Do you know of the resurrection of Jesus Christ? Yeah. He was crucified and resurrected after 3 days. You told me about it. How do you think Jesus was resurrected? Didn't he just get up as if he was waking up in the morning? He was buried after his execution. so his body was in the ground. Did he break open the tombstone and crawl out like a zombie? No, that wouldn't be called a resurrection. The sinners who killed Jesus imagined exactly the same thing. Jesus predicted just before he was executed that he would come back to life after 3 days. The sinners buried Jesus, sealed his tomb, and posted guards to watch over it. But what Jesus meant wasn't that he would resurrect physically. He meant his teachings would be resurrected. After 3 days, Jesus' teachings were resurrected and people regained their belief. The heart of those who wanted to be shown the proper way revived his teachings. That's what the resurrection of Jesus is all about. He came to life in the hearts of his believers. Jesus doesn't exist physically on this earth, but he exists in people's hearts. In other words, that's when Jesus became an existence superior to humans. Even if it's after the Earth's Day. As long as this work receives a fair evaluation, it will live again as a great achievement. Even if my body is gone by then, my life will return and receive recognition. Does that mean you'll become a god, just like Jesus did? Indeed. My research will be recognized for what it is someday. That's when I will become a god. That's why I'm not in a rush to achieve that recognition. I don't know when that day will come. God doesn't know that either. But the day will come. That's why I need to continue to work as hard as I can. It was very sad to hear my grandfather say that his life would end one day. He wasn't ill, but he didn't only have a few years left to live. But set next to the average lifespan, his remaining years didn't look like much. The only person left in my life was my grandfather, so I didn't even want to consider what it would be like with him gone. Grandfather must have remembered that I didn't like to talk about that subject. With a tender smile, he gently patted my head. Of course, I want my research to be recognized before I die. I will do my best. Yep, I'll do my best to help you too. I purposefully didn't mention the before you die part. I got myself before I said it. Thank you, that made me very happy to hear. Grandfather smiled in satisfaction. His research wasn't exactly outrageous. He wasn't trying to uncover the mysteries of the universe. He was only searching for the possibility that parasites could be responsible for human behavior. Nothing more than that. Nothing outrageous. It really wasn't a wild idea. He even set some leads. Hinamizawa village, Shishibone City, XX Prefecture. The villagers there are possessed by a powerful homesickness. When they are unable to return, they allegedly behave abnormally as if they are cursed. There are also some bizarre rules in place in the village based on their belief system. When he was working with the military during the war, my grandfather noticed similarities between the people in Hinamizawa and assumed that some kind of existence was responsible for their odd behavior. He'd been researching ever since then. In the middle of the 20th century, numerous strange diseases were discovered all over Japan. Most of them were caused by infectious parasites, and people started to pay attention to this forgotten field of study. Grandfather's research was simply one of those investigations into such diseases. Therefore, he believed it would be published amongst other research and attain recognition soon. recognition soon. But if his research didn't bear fruit before his death, I wanted to continue it. I wanted to continue his research. Grandfather taught me resurrection isn't something that happens physically. It's when your life's work is appreciated. That's what he meant by resurrection. That's when he'll become God. That's when he'll become a God. So when my grandfather dies, he'll still be with me forever. I wouldn't have to be alone ever again. I would always be with my grandpa. Our works will gain recognition, and we'll both become gods, gaining eternal peace. I will make my grandfather into a god. I will become a god. Therefore, we will be granted eternity. We'll be together forever and ever. I don't know who that is, but I assume that's still the same person, so I'm gonna continue the same voice. I was looking at the key on the keychain. The key was labeled N house, but the lock Eriko was trying to open didn't belong to that door. It should have opened effortlessly. At least, that's what was supposed to happen. But it didn't open. I noticed beads of sweat forming on Eriko's forehead. She was the one who came up with this idea. Eriko was starting to panic. The rest of us started to panic too. This only opens the hen house. Let's stop, let's go back. Shh. We're supposed to be cleaning out the hen house. If they found us back here, if they found out why we were here and why we were trying to open the lock to the back door, then all four of us were sure to be sentenced to Splayed Biggie. Don't panic, Eriko. That key opens this lock, right? You already tried it, right? Really? Shut up for a minute? This is the right key. It's just hard to open, that's all. She was almost shrieking. Her heart were pumping loudly. It was as though the sound of her heartbeats was echoing through the hallway. And at that point, we heard footsteps that didn't belong to a child. Shh! Somebody's coming! The three of us held our breath, but Eriko didn't hear it. She kept fuzzing with the lock and the key, as if everything would be okay if she could just open the lock. Eriko, somebody's coming, be quiet. I know this is the right key. I'm not dreaming, and I'm already tried and opened it, and it opened. Come on, why isn't this working? When this lock is open, we can be happy, and we can say goodbye to this hell. Eriko, someone's coming. Higurashi When They Cry, Keiichi. So what that's all about? Interesting. Okay, are we still with the same person or somebody else? I'm gonna continue with the same kind of voice. Okay, let's continue. My father and mother died. I don't know exactly how old they were. I was too young to remember. They went shopping without me, and that must be why they were punished. Oh. Could it be somebody else then? It was a train accident. What a terrible disaster. A lot of people died in that incident. But maybe my father was one of the lucky ones. He was still alive when he arrived at the hospital, so he was able to share his final words with me. My mother died instantly. Daddy, 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 daddy. I didn't want to admit that this person I could hardly recognize was my father. As I called out to him, I hoped that it was someone else instead. But unfortunately, it was my father. Maybe I shouldn't have woken him, because when I woke him up, he was reminded of a miserable agony that he had forgotten. Oh, oh, daddy, 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 daddy. He tried to move his right arm so he could pat my head, but his arm was wrapped in bandages and his hand was no longer there. I couldn't find his hand anywhere on the bed. I only had scary memories of his right hand. Its main job was to slap me when I did something bad, but I never wished it to be gone. Besides, that hand also patted my head, even though that only happened a few times. It was a big, warm hand, and it stroked my head very gently. But no matter what good deed I did, he could no longer rub my head. No, his hand was the least of his worries. He had to go into emergency surgery. The doctors already warned me that the chance of him surviving was very low. That was why I was allowed to see him, regardless of his condition. Not only could he no longer rub my head, he might be gone forever. Daddy, the surgery will make you better, right? Daddy, you'll get better, right? Right? Listen carefully. Your daddy might not make it. Even if I die, you have to be strong, okay? No, no. You'll get better. The doctor is going to make you better. So you're not going to die. He was a stubborn and old-fashioned father. He believed endurance was a virtue, and he never complained about anything. That was why I couldn't believe he actually said he might not make it. I tried desperately to deny his word. But even that wish wouldn't prolong his life. My father, knowing his time was limited, tried to tell me some important things, but I interrupted his efforts by crying like a baby. I just wanted him to slap me, just like he used to do every time I cried like a baby, but he would never slap me again. Listen well, your mother and I both lost all of our family in the war, so after I'm dead, there won't be anyone left to take care of you. He didn't need to tell me that. My parents used to tell me that all the time, so I was aware of that fact. In other words, my father was the only relative I had left in this entire world. If I die, you can count on Dr. Takano. Dr. Ifumi Takano. Can you say it? Hi, Ifumi Takano. That's right, Dr. Ifumi Takano. He's my former teacher. He will help you. Daddy, 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 daddy. Many doctors came into the room in a hurry. He wanted to tell me something else, but the doctor stopped him from talking, so I wasn't able to hear him. I was kicked out of the room. I didn't know what to do. Nobody told me how my father was doing or when the surgery was going to start, and nobody told me that that was going to be the last conversation I ever had with my father. I think I asked people at the government office about Dr. Takano. They'd asked me if I knew his phone number. I said I didn't. Then they didn't ask me anything further. Sometimes they told me they would look into it, but nothing led to anything. They couldn't find me a guardian, so I ended up going to an orphanage. At the time, there were plenty of orphans from the war, so although there were many orphanages around, they were all full. There were also some orphanages run by civilians. I was sent to one of the civilian orphanages. There was no profit to be had in taking in an orphan in the first place, so I thought the civilians who were running orphanages must have been very good people. Sorry. I was sure they hoped that the child would grow in this loving environment and enter into society with a sense of gratitude, but reality isn't so kind. How many children in this world can actually express their gratitude towards their parents in the first place? Children are supposed to be nurtured by their parents' love. Therefore, when that environment is destroyed, their hearts are wounded. Every child has his or her own personality. Receiving affection doesn't guarantee that a child will become someone angelic. Not everyone's heart can be healed. That was why there were some problem kids at the orphanage. Maybe I shouldn't call them problem kids, for the sadness and despair of losing their parents and the anger at having to hide such feelings filled those kids' hearts. Spending time individually with the children could have solved their problems. But at the orphanage where I was, none of the staff members even tried to spend time with them or put in an effort to understand them. All they could do was make sure that the kids follow the rules. Therefore, we could only see the children's emotional plea for help as problems. In this world, nobody expresses love without expecting something in return. That person who founded that orphanage was expecting something in return as well. He wanted the children to appreciate him. That was why such a fine dream was destroyed by cruel reality. The children called the orphanage a prison and nobody appreciated the staff at all. In fact, all they did was complain. That made the staff slowly realize that love alone couldn't run a facility like that. Just like how the children called it a prison, the staff started to recognize the facility as a prison too. It was a chain reaction resulting from mistrust on both sides. The staff bound the children with rules so they could suppress problems behavior. There was a framed pictures of the founder of this orphanage, but I had never seen him in person. Was he satisfied with the fact that he put his own money into this social service? Or maybe he finally realized his dream of being surrounded by angelic children and being celebrated for what he did was simply that, a dream? I don't know. But there's one thing I'm certain of. Such a dream didn't exist at the orphanage. Orphanage. I don't know. There were so many rules and several plausible standards outlined for us, but the most valued one was silence. Children's chatter tends to increase each other's volume just like mics drawing closer, and sometimes that leads to fights and the disturbance of order. So children were forbidden from speaking with each other. With us disallowed, we must have thought things would go smoothly. However, I think I always heard people's voices at the orphanage. There were two kinds of voices. One was the staff yelling, and the other was the children crying. We were not allowed to walk around inside of the orphanage freely, so we never knew who it was that was crying. One time, along with the crying and yelling, We heard the noise of metallic things being smashed against each other. We knew it was some kind of punishment, but there was no way for us to even imagine what it was. We trembled, pretended we didn't hear anything, and kept working on our assignments. One of my roommates told me it was the casket punishment, but she didn't tell me any further, and I didn't want to know either. Even if we behaved exactly the same way as yesterday, if the staff were in a bad mood, they might pick on us. So even if I didn't want to know, I might suddenly find out what the casket punishment is one day. The footsteps of a staff member were getting closer. We noticed them, so we straightened our backs and pretended we were studying hard. It was more important when the staff saw us doing so than us actually getting any work done. I noticed the girl next to me was falling asleep, so I poked her with my elbow. She noticed my signal and straightened her back like the other children. It was almost evening. This was the hardest time for us to keep ourselves awake and the most dangerous time. The door to our room opened, and a mean-looking man showed up. Then he looked around to make sure none of us were falling asleep. Even if we were actually studying hard, if he thought we were asleep, we were out. That was why we had to make sure we appeared to be studying very hard. The man walked around our desks. I hoped he would just walk by me. That was what we all prayed as we kept working on our homework. The more we pretended to study hard, the more we could hear the sound of metal objects. The sound of metal objects crashing into each other, along with screams. We couldn't even imagine what the poor subject of that punishment was going through. Maybe there was something even worse than the casket punishment. To erase such fears, we tried to concentrate even harder on our work. We kept working, as the metal sounds and the screams went on forever. Alright, I think that's where we're gonna stop because it's already been 37 minutes. It seems that that beginning is mostly about one person and the story of that person, but it looks like if it was really that person, she seems to have a grandfather, which is Ifumi Takano. So does that mean that the person that is talking right now is basically the person that will become the granddaughter of Ifumi Takano? That's what I'm curious about, and unfortunately I'm not gonna know now. But obviously on your side, you may have understood that if Ifumi Takano has a granddaughter, the granddaughter can only be one person in the whole franchise, and it would be Mion Takano, right? And Mion Takano is actually a very important character, more than what we thought she would be at the beginning. So, that being said, if you read episodes 5, 6, 7, you may hear much more about Takano than you think you would. And that's where we're gonna stop. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope that it gave you a little bit of an idea about how the episode 8 begins. I'm pretty sure the more you go into the episode, the more there's a lot of things being explained because it's the end, it's the last one. But that's where we're gonna stop. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this show, please put a like on. If it's on YouTube, if it's on Facebook, please follow the page, and see you all of you soon. Bye bye.